because I'm a bad host. And okay, that's recording. Everyone who's just started watching this in the replay, I messed up. We've got to record up until now. So Karan's already given some incredible insights, but he'll continue to deliver more, I'm sure.
Yeah, happy to share. So I think from an event standpoint, the easiest way I bucket my events is there's a pre-event experience, there's a during event experience, and there's a post-event experience. I believe all three are equally as important. I know a lot of events are focusing on the event itself, the dinner, the 2-day mastermind, the event. That experience absolutely needs to be incredible. But I think you can make that experience incredible by having a really cool pre-event experience in the form of something as simple as a survey. I've worked with event organizers where they've wanted to send gifts in advance. And guess what? Nobody wants your company branded coffee mug, okay? Like nobody needs another coffee mug with your logo on it. So if you're going to send a gift, which is a nice gesture, and it's awesome, it's cool to receive something in the mail that's not from the bank or not from the government. Send something that maybe relates to that individual. And again, I said earlier, one of my favorite questions is, what is your favorite guilty pleasure under $25? If Tom says padded journals, then before the event, he's going to have a padded journal show up in his mailbox. And to me, it just creates this connection. And you can send that gift either pre-event, or I've got this 60-day nurture sequence post-event, whereas I believe that the relationship building doesn't stop when the event is over. It's a continuous cycle. So I'm happy to dive into any of that, like pre, during, or post-event experiences.
That'd be great. I mean, we've touched a little bit on pre-event. One last question I'll give you for that is, how do you decide on the questions? Is this just stuff you kind of come up with over time? Do you have particular ideas when you're writing them? How did you come up with the questions?
So let me talk about two different styles of events. There's virtual events, and my in-person events are largely dinners. Dinners are the ones I host. I get hired for 2-3-day mastermind conferences where the entrepreneur wants me to connect with people and help attendees connect more with the organizer, ultimately so they can sell more, right? Ultimately, they've got a $10,000 package, a 20, 30 grand mastermind, whatever that is. My job when I get hired is, how do I make the event more about the attendee and less about the organizers? So if this was an in-person event, absolutely, intake forms, making sure the onboarding experience from the moment they show up to the hotel is just like top notch, to having name cards to when they sit down, to having their favorite gift sitting on their chair, to having something ready in their hotel room, to giving them something like a postcard that I want them to send back to somebody at home and thank them for allowing them to be at this event. What I mean by that is, let's say you traveled all the way to Toronto to come visit me for a 3-day event. Man, you might be leaving back a partner, a girlfriend, boyfriend, a mom or dad, a sister, a dog. You might be leaving someone behind that has allowed you to actually come to Toronto for 2 or 3 days. So we actually send you handwrite a postcard back to your spouse and say, hey, I couldn't be here without you. I just want to thank you. I just want to acknowledge you. And then that postcard typically arrives before you're even back home. And we've seen some incredible people connect. People have written notes to like their passed away parents and thank them. It's been like some really powerful stuff. Like I literally have goosebumps talking about this, because when you can connect with somebody emotionally, the logical side of business is just so simple. But if you don't connect that on that emotional level, in the last event I worked at, we also had a candy hotline. So if ever you felt like you were losing energy at the event, you would text this number and I would show up and I'd throw like Skittles at you and just like wake you up with like chocolate and candy. It was this candy hotline that was like the hottest thing at this event. From a virtual experience, I love Zoom events. I think breakout rooms are a no-brainer for any event, and I can see a lot of head nods here. How I get clarity, Deb's like, yep, absolutely. Breakout rooms can turn a 100-person event into the most intimate 3-4 person mastermind setting. It's so beautiful. I think what's awkward is that if you pair people up randomly without any context and without actually setting the expectations. So for me at my events, before somebody ever goes into a breakout room, there is always a question that I pose for them to answer in the breakout rooms. And I'll also lead with a personal story of myself first. For example, Tom, if I was to ask you, who has made you the person you are today? And what's the top thing you'd thank them for? And we use that as an icebreaker with 4 strangers. Man, the level of depth that conversation goes immediately, it's like, whew, there's no facade. There's no, hey, this is what I do. This is why I'm here. This is how I know Karan. There's none of that. It's like relationship building from the moment you enter the event to the moment you leave. And for my events, especially my virtual dinners, as the 2-hour event progresses, the questions get deeper and deeper and deeper, from a state of like, I'm kind of curious about you, to holy shit, I'm getting to know you, to, oh my God, did you just tell me that? Like, it goes deep real quick. And that's why people have learned more about their best friends in a 2-hour virtual dinner than they have in 10 years of just knowing them, because I just love to ask questions.
That's kind of what I do generally. I'm kind of a pain in the ass to be around, because, I go for dinner with people, and rather than just lighthearted banter, it's always like, what are you struggling with right now? What's the meaning of life?
Yeah, I love that, dude. I love it.
Could you, we're going to go on to somebody asked, Victoria, I think it was, asked about the post-event stuff. We could jump straight to post, or we could even do it in order, and start a little bit with the actual events themselves, like how they're structured, and, how, is it all questions, or is it like, do other things too? Like, how do you structure the actual events themselves?
We're talking virtual?
Yeah, stick with virtual for now, yeah.
Let's talk about virtual events right now, because we're in a virtual place and time in the world where I think a lot of events are still virtual. And I think there's going to be hybrid models going forward. I truly don't feel like events will ever be what they were. I think they're actually going to be better. So from a virtual event perspective, how my dinners work, and I'm going to be speaking about dinners. Remember, the dinner has like 1% to do with the food and 99% to do with the attendee's experience at the event from a facilitation standpoint. So how I start my event is the first 10 minutes, I'll actually share that survey data. So I'll pull up my slideshow, I'll share survey data, I'll talk about all the responses. Again, that creates this psychological safety. People feel like I'm not alone. These answers are very similar to my answers. Wow, I'm in the right room. Then I share about the wins. Where do people want to be a year from today? And I start to, again, see that there's 3 to 5 very common themes of people saying, well, I want to hit my first 6 figures. I want to hire my first VA. I want to hit 7 figures. I want to write my first book. There's a lot of themes that continuously pop up. So I share those as well. And then immediately I send people off into breakout rooms with paired questions so that there's no awkwardness in the room of you go first, what brought you here? There's no surface level questions. We go deep right away. Now, here's the key. As the breakout rooms get deeper and deeper from a question standpoint, my questions are designed to help people learn about someone's past, their present, and their future. Every question is designed in a manner where you're going to extract really something deep out of a stranger, for lack of a better word, and get to know them really well. And when we come back from the breakout rooms, we do what I call group sharing. So I would say, Tom, you don't have to tell me who was in your group, but I'd love to hear 2 to 3 main takeaways that your group discussed. And what that does is it creates this network of learning of every breakout room now coming to the table, sharing their lessons learned from one question. And you start to realize that, wow, that group talked about something similar, or that group talked about something that I had no idea even existed. And you start to connect these dots at events of similarity and connection. And then I think that's probably the biggest key is, as much as people are in breakout rooms, every breakout room is timed so that every attendee has the equal amount of time on stage or in the limelight than maybe an extrovert who wants to hog the mic. So as people are in breakout rooms, they're getting broadcast messages from me saying 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, switch to person B, switch to person C, 60 seconds left. So it's it doesn't feel to the attendee like it's a very structured or curated event. But as a facilitator and moderator, every 15 minutes for that 2 hours, it's completely accounted for. They just don't feel it. And then when they come back from their breakout rooms and we do the group sharing, I actually go a level deeper, Tom. I actually open up Spotify and I have music that pairs with the question. So as the questions get deeper and deeper, the music actually gets a little bit more emotional. And for me, one of my key KPIs at all of my events are tears. If someone doesn't cry at one of my events, I'm like, shit, this event sucked. I'm like, oh man, this is not cool at all. So for me, I love seeing people come out of breakout rooms. And I kid you not, Deb and Tom, I see people coming back from the breakout rooms and they're just like doing this. And that I'm like, oh, yes.
That's amazing, man.
And it's not out of a place of like, I'm gonna make Deb cry. Watch, let me ask her 3 deep questions that she's been holding on to herself for the last 30 years. That's not what I mean. I mean, I gave Deb the space to just get off her chest something that's been, her thorn, for lack of a better word. She's now has a place where she can actually share something because, listen, we can't share everything with our friends. We can't share everything with our partner at home. We can't share everything with our parents. Like, there's just some people in our life, as much as we love them, we can't have some of these vulnerable conversations because it's awkward, or we feel intimidated, or we feel like it's not the right space. You create an atmosphere with strangers where everyone feels like they're on a level playing field. Dude, the relationships that can scale from that go so deep so quick. And that's another reason why I think these events are so successful, is because they're 1% about the organizer and 99% about the user experience.
That's incredible. I've got 2 questions related to that. Then I'll open up to see if anyone's got any questions for where we're currently at. And then maybe we can move on to the post-event stuff too. So my 2 questions for you right now were, first of all, while everyone's in the breakout rooms, what are you doing? Are you still actively involved somehow? Are you kind of like, what are you doing in that time?
So sometimes there will be breakout rooms where the numbers are not even. You're going to get that at every event, right? It might be 30 groups of 4, 1 group of 3, 1 group of 5. It's just like sometimes the numbers don't work out. Yeah. So I insert myself into the rooms to make the numbers even up. Now, if there's a setting where there's 6 rooms of 6 and we've got great numbers, then I might just pop in for 30 seconds a piece to every breakout room just to get a vibe of the conversation. But honestly, there's a lot of my events, I'm just sitting in the back end like a moderator. I'm not even going into the breakout rooms. I don't even hear the conversations unless I'm in the room. Where I do learn the most is when everyone comes back from a breakout room and I ask people like you, like Tom and Deb, to share what came up in your breakout room. And again, I start to identify there's a lot of themes. There's a lot of themes that come up. And I'm very good at making people feel safe, but I'm also good at calling people out who I haven't seen speak yet. So if you've been at my 2-hour event and I haven't seen you unmute once, I'm going to say, so Tom, how about you? I haven't heard from you yet. And that, again, it makes everyone feel really inclusive. And then when you're on Zoom speaking, I'll spotlight you so everybody gets to see you, right? This is now Tom's stage in front of 30, 40, 150 people. Because I think there's a lot of introverts that come to my events that are not used to the stage. They're not used to talking. And this is the one stage I want them to have where they feel like they can just be themselves.
I love that. Awesome. My second question was related to the in-person events too. Give me a second to recollect what it was because I was just listening to everything you were saying. The second question was about, maybe I haven't got it anymore. In which case I'll open it up. Does anyone else have any questions right now about in-person events? Oh no, I do. I remember it. By the very nature of what you're doing is, you're creating vulnerable spaces for people to open up and possibly share really difficult things. Do you do anything to, protect people's? Have you ever had any instances where you've had to kind of intervene and kind of help people to deal with really difficult shit? Has that ever come up?
Man, it's so interesting you say that. I've done about 180 dinners and maybe a handful of my own events. If there's something that's really deep that's about to go down, I will actually bring in an outside facilitator. Like we had a group of 35 entrepreneurs do an in-person breathwork session at a 2-day event. For those of you who don't know anything about breathwork, like that can take you to very dark places. It can unlock a lot of stuff in you. I've never had anything like crazy happen at my events where I've had to intervene, but anytime I'm about to drop an experience on someone, like a breathwork session that could completely like psychologically mess them up, I always bring in trained facilitators because that is not my space.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Awesome. Anybody else listening in right now, either yourself, Deb, or anyone who's in chat, does anyone have any questions about the in-person events and any questions you wanted about how to structure those as well?
There's something really cool I did at an event last year. Back in the good old days when I could travel, was the day of the event. It was a 2-day event, and everybody had this blank sheet of paper on their desk waiting, like printer paper. And what I had told the organizer, the entrepreneur who had hired me, was we're going to do this exercise called limiting beliefs. And what everyone did on that piece of paper was they wrote down all their beliefs about themselves that they wish weren't true. I'm not good enough. I'm addicted to sugar. I can't wake up at 6 a.m. My clients don't value my services. I don't produce a return for anyone. I can't work out because of my bum knee. All of this stuff. And what we did, I don't have it in front of me, but we turned it into a paper airplane. And it wasn't, and your name wasn't on it. We turned it into this paper airplane. And we said, the moment you throw this airplane away, all of that stuff that you just wrote down is no longer true. And you see like 100 paper airplanes in the air, the most beautiful sight ever, like a bunch of adults playing with paper airplanes, throwing away their limiting beliefs was so magical. It helped people feel free and just like, wow, you're right. I can make that decision. What's even more powerful is all of those paper airplanes that then flew and then landed on the ground. I asked people to pick up a random airplane and share what was in it. And what that does to a collective group of like me picking up Debbie's airplane. I didn't know it was Debbie's because there's no names on it. Sorry, I keep calling you Debbie, Deb. Like me picking up someone else's airplane and reading out their 10 limiting beliefs and thinking, holy shit, I've got 3 of these in common with you, is some of the most powerful stuff I've seen at a live event from a connection focused. And I've got like a library of ideas that I like to test. But that paper airplane one is so magical.
That's incredible. I mean, it sounds like so much of your event is really, really thoughtful. Like you said, everything from the questions beforehand, you know, the things going on, the gifts and stuff. How do you come up with this? Is it like you're sit at home brainstorming? How do you even come up with things like this?
Well, I thought about every networking event I went to, and I wrote down all the things I hated about it and all the things that made me feel like I was another number or I was another ticket. I was another entrant to this event. Yeah. And I said, wow, I just paid $300 to go to this event and nobody even welcomed me into the hotel. Okay, let me write that down. Let's change that. I got a company branded coffee mug in the mail. I don't need that. I've already got 40 coffee mugs. Okay, let's change that. How about we send Tom a bag of Skittles because that's what he said on the survey. So for me, it's a lot of it's by like, Deb's laughing, but so true. A lot of this is like trial and error. Like, what is the stuff I hate? I don't say the word hate a lot, but what is the experiences that I don't enjoy and how can I make them better? And then it's just a matter of every client I work with really does have their own unique set of requirements and needs. So I'm put on the spot at times where I just look for like really good team building exercises that I could be extrapolated to entrepreneurs, because that's kind of my niche. Is I work with entrepreneurs that have high ticket packages, and any activity I can do that just makes people feel like their voice matters to me is like one I absolutely keep in my toolkit.
That's awesome. That's really, really good. I already love the ideas. I've been writing down notes already. I love the things you've been.
Oh man, the postcard. I'm telling you, if you do a live event and underneath everyone's like welcome workbook is this hidden postcard of like Slovenia. Let's say they come to visit you.
Yeah. And
you're like, hey, I want you to write this postcard to somebody who's allowed you to be here for the next 3 days and give them the thanks that they deserve. I've had people buy multi-$1,000 packages because of a postcard. Because they said this was so intentionally thought out, and I've never experienced this before. And I think what you said earlier, like why does every aspect feel so personalized? Is I believe there's a lot of intention behind every little touch point that you have with a potential customer. Every touch point you have, this is a touch point we're having. The emails is a touch point. The hotels, the events, it's a touch point. So how can you make every touch point amazing? When you walk into a Las Vegas hotel, these Vegas hotels spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on the scent of their hotel, right? So like the MGM has a different scent than the Bellagio. The Bellagio has a different scent than the Cosmopolitan. It's because like, and that's something else. It's like, how do you, I knew an entrepreneur actually who at every event of his, he had custom scents. So that when you walked into his rooms, you just felt like motivated, inspired. So like, how can you tackle like the sense, the touch, the taste, the sight, and how do you tap into all 5 senses and really make it like an immersive experience and not just an event?
Yeah, that's amazing. So we've got a few questions which have come up actually. Deb's just asked one in the comments. So Deb, you asked, I was wondering if you have any suggestions about people starting and how to market events, get people to show up and participate, as well as the cost and value and how you justify the price when starting. So yeah, I think Deb is talking about when you first start out, how can you justify that and get it started?
Well, Deb, let's hear from you. Let's talk about your current situation. What's the event you're hoping to launch, and just tell me a little bit more about it.
Well, I'll tell you about past events because I chose not to do any new events in 2021. I launched virtual events in last year. I started doing an in-person event in January, but then I'll change that to virtual in April. And I was doing weekly virtual events around wellness and healthcare, doing exactly, not exactly, but similar kind of conversations with breakout rooms and having some people go in depth about how to find calm, which is the community that I built. It's called Find Calm Here. It was people really wanting to join. And I had them for free for right now, just virtual events to get people, because I was trying to build an audience and figure out what people liked, just kind of doing test beta virtual events. I recruited about 45 speakers. So I held them every week. It's a lot of time. And at the end of the year, I was burnt out. And I didn't have any money to show for it. And so that's why I'm kind of like, if I ever do a virtual event, which I'm sure I will, because I would really like them, or even an in-person event, which I would like even much better. I would love to create this kind of similar experience and be able to really have, speakers that are empowering and all of the things that you're taught and creating this experience. But the problem is there's so many people in this space, and there's so many people that have much more experience. And there's so much demand on people's time right now. And so I think all of those combined make it really, you have to really be intentional about your time and what time you're going to give to somebody in a space. The most successful, just recently joined a smaller group that's kind of doing mindful conversations in maybe a support group, you could call it. And even those are very hard to get. There's 12 people and maybe 6. So it's just even when people say they want to really participate, they're not always showing up for many reasons you don't know,
Yeah, totally feel you on that. And I think there is a Zoom burnout is real. I think we've all experienced it. I've experienced it. And my events are on Zoom as well. So for me, it's a couple things. If you were to do another virtual event, I would base your speakers based on what you might have uncovered in the intake forms. Right. So if you realize that out of 60% of your audience is saying they've got one headache, I would align your speakers with their headaches. I would also align their wants and dreams and desires from a year from today also with the speakers. Right. What speakers or what type of vibe can you create where the event experience is really catered to not just Deb's experience, because I think that's beyond important, but also the needs and the wants and the desires of the audience. In terms of saying, there's a lot of people here, the market is saturated. True, but there's only one Deb. There's only one Deb. You say certain things a way that people are going to resonate with you. Me and Tom can say the exact same thing as you. Some people may not resonate with us. They're going to resonate with you all day long. So never think that there's a market that's saturated, because there's only one you. There's only one your energy. There's only one the glasses you have on. Right? I mean, I'm sure there's millions, but there's only one you, and that's what people are going to keep coming back to. So from a saturation standpoint, I don't think there's a ton of people like me in the world, but there's only one me, and there's no one like me. Same thing goes for you. There's one thing I don't typically love. A lot of my friends I've seen have attended these 3-day virtual events with 150 speakers. And I'm actually speaking at another event like that next week with 10,000 people in a virtual event over 3 days. What I don't like about that is, how do you build intimacy? How do you actually build intimacy? And I'm so glad Tom agreed to bring people up on stage today, or on this virtual stage, because it's so much more interactive versus you typing a question. So I'm not a personal fan of multi-day events with 150 speakers, because I feel like there's just no message and there's just too many different messages. So if you can theme your event on what is the transformation, what is the result, what is the outcome, and just have it very in your lane and not in 40 different lanes, I feel like it's just a better event experience for everyone. And listen, you can do pricing an event, I know entrepreneurs who price their event between $1 and $7, have an upsell for $50 if they want event recordings, and then sell a $15,000 coaching program at the end of day 3. So, and I believe that like entry point into pricing, if you can price, and let's be honest, with a virtual event, your costs are a lot lower than renting a hotel for 3 days. But there's so many different models around that, right? From a pricing standpoint, get them in low, little mini upsell to keep them even more fired up. Maybe a VIP experience, another VIP ticket. For the last 2 events I did, I had a $197 ticket and a $397 ticket. That was the VIP experience. The only difference was that the VIPs got a private 2-hour mastermind with me and the speakers. That was the only difference. And I had like a 50-50 take. Some people wanted just the event and 50% wanted. I was like, what, really? I've also had events where I've charged, $30 for an event, but also $3,000 for the same event. And I always laugh when people buy the $3,000. I'm like, wow, cool. all of these self-limiting beliefs are just self-imposed. So like, there's no such thing as the right price, right? I would pay $10 for this coffee. You might pay $1 for it. There's no such thing as the right price. There's a $1 donut. There's an $8 donut. There's no such thing, in my opinion, as the right price for anything. It's what the users pay.
Definitely. And I think also, Deb, something which you didn't mention, which I think is super important, is that free events also are a lower price point, because you can not go to a free event. You can say, yeah, I'm going, but on the day you're like, I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Whereas when there's been any kind of spending, whether it's $5, $10, you've kind of committed something to that, and you're less likely to say no to it.
I sign up for virtual events. Really, I'm signing up for the replay.
Yeah.
Let's be real. I'm not going to, unless it's like my favorite speaker or it's on like one of my thorn topics that I'm like, I need this solved yesterday, I will show up. But to your point, there's so much competition for time these days that if you make a replay available, it drastically reduces the number of people that will show up. And to Tom's point, totally agree. If there's no skin in the game, there's no transformation. There's no result.
We've had a few more questions come in. What I'm going to do is somebody, Aprilani, who is on the call with us now, I think. I can bring you up on stage if you like, Aprilani. Just tell me in the comments. But in her sign up, she said, what are some subtle ways of moving from surface level small talk to much deeper conversations and deeper topics to kind of create a better relationship? You've already touched a little bit upon that. Do you want to just reiterate a few points there for Aprilani? And if you're listening, Aprilani, and you want to come on stage, please feel free to let me know and I'll put you on stage with us.
Yeah, I love this question on how do you subtly make the event like more intimate and go deeper and deeper and deeper. I love it. Let's be real. If Tom and I are complete strangers and I ask Tom, what's a story that best captures a time in your life where you felt rejected? He might look at me and be like, dude, what are you talking about? I just met you. Whereas if I started with, hey, I'm going to put Tom and Deb in a breakout room, and I just want you guys to learn as much about the other person as possible, just not about their work. That's the only rule. You just can't talk about work. Then I find that you start to realize, oh, Tom also likes basketball. He also likes journaling. He also likes coffee. So for me, and I forget who asked this question, but I do start my questions at, quote, surface level, but they're not surface level like, what's your favorite sport? Or what's your favorite movie? Or what do you do on the weekends? They're very intentional about how can I make one person listen more than they speak? And that's very consistent in all of my breakout rooms, is that everybody listens twice as much as they speak. And then as the virtual event goes on, like again, I just go deeper and deeper with my questions from a place of, let me start with a couple questions that I have that are just designed to make people curious. And then how do I go from curiosity to maybe a little bit more intimate? And then how do I go from intimate to a little bit more vulnerable? And that's how I do it, right? It doesn't start vulnerable. It's not like you get the deepest question right away. It takes time. The other very key part of this is as the users, as the participants are going deeper and deeper, I'm also sharing a deeper part of my life with them. Every question, before you ever go into a breakout room, I answer it first. I'll tell you something in my life that happened in relation to that question, and I will always lead by example. I will answer it first. And what that allows is other people permission to also feel safe seeing me as the leader also going first. And that just creates, again, this environment of like, holy shit, if he just did it, I can do it.
Love that. This is April. This is who asked the question initially.
Great question. I loved it.
Morning.
Would you like to follow up? Was there any other questions related to that you'd like to follow up with, April?
Okay, so it sounded like you were saying modeling for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Do you have another way? Because it's very subtle, I work with people who were not really as in your face. That's probably not a nice way of saying that, but in Hawaii, we're more subtle, we're laid back. We don't always come on very strongly. We're usually we have that aloha spirit, so we're more subtle. That's why I asked that. But do you have other ways also besides modeling? Because that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think modeling is really important. I like the idea of like starting from a place of how can we just build trust?
Yes.
And what are some questions that can build trust immediately before we go any deeper? Because I think like the tactical, everything else that comes out of it, the knowledge, without the trust, it doesn't land as deeply.
Exactly.
So in like the first 10 minutes, and again, I don't know if we're talking about virtual events for you in person, but let's just say, how can you quickly build trust within the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of your event to make every attendee feel like, holy shit, I've never experienced this before.
Okay, great.
And it's a very subtle way because you're the event, you're the product, you are the expert. So I think that paired with modeling could work really well for you.
Thank you. That's really great. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. Really good question.
Great question.
Do you ever have to bring people again? A lot of your events go deep. Do people happy to stay there, or do you ever have to kind of lift the mood and bring them?
No, dude. Well, once you get to that like level 6 of depth, you only want to go to level 7. And once you get to level 7, you want to go to level 8 because you start to realize that the other people around you in the event are right there with you, right? So you're at level 7, everybody is at level 7. You go to level 8, everybody's at level 8. It's like this cohesive environment. So I think to go back up to like level 2 or 3 would probably disrupt the flow of the experience, and it wouldn't give it the same like intimacy if we were jumping from like curious, vulnerable, because people are going on a journey with you. And if you keep messing up their journey, they're going to say, oh, I'm feeling lost. So just like a movie, I feel like events should have like an arc, right? Like what happens before, during, after.
Love that. That's amazing. Gabriel has also written a question. I can bring you up on stage. Just let me know in the comments if you want to come up on stage. But your question was, how was the process? Oh, yeah. So you're doing in-person events before. How did you adapt to doing it on Zoom? And what were your initial experiences, learnings, and probably mistakes that you made in that process of converting from in-person events to Zoom and online events?
Is this question written? I'd love to read it as well.
Yeah, sure. So Gabriel in the comments, I think the third comment back is the question we're working on right now.
So how was the process of adapting to Zoom events for you? What were some of the initial experiences or learnings? Any stories worth sharing? Yeah, Gabriel, my first ever virtual Zoom dinner, I realized everybody had the wrong link. I was the only one who showed up, and I panicked. Because my phone was blowing up of emails being like, hey, I'm here with my food. Where is everyone? And I realized that just the way Zoom gave them a different link and it gave me a different link. That was my first ever virtual dinner. Talk about a slap in the face. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to replicate this entire experience virtually. And then my first event was went, wow. Now the event itself was really cool. The process of adapting was that actually I went deeper on who the person is than ever before, because I truly was now meeting complete strangers on a different part of the world. Like my network in like Europe and Australia during COVID went from like non-existent to existent. I started to meet people that I normally wouldn't meet in a pandemic-free world because I was just in my own bubble. So I think what virtual allowed me to do was just really build my network. The process of adapting to Zoom events, again, Zoom is one of these things where sometimes you can't control their servers. So I've had a room where someone paid me 10 grand to facilitate a 2-hour event for their company with their best clients. And the event was really used to how do we nurture our best client relationships. The first breakout room I sent everyone into, on my screen, everyone was great. Everyone was in groups of 3. I didn't realize that Zoom messed up and it sent everyone off into breakout rooms of just themselves. So on my screen, it was like, cool, Tom, Deb, and Aprilani are in a room. And yet I'm getting DMs saying, hey, there's no one else in my room. This is my first breakout room of a 2-hour event where a company paid 10 grand. I was like, what? So like there's a lot of the Zoom side of things that kind of scare me sometimes. Luckily, it's only happened twice.
Awesome. Does that answer your question, Gabriel? They said they're up for being up on stage if they want. Yes, the question is answered.
There was a question earlier that is really important. Victoria asked it. I don't know if Victoria is still here. I don't see her name, but hopefully she'll catch the recording. She said, can you talk more about the 60-day nurture post-event sequence? And I think it's a really valuable piece of my events. So as I said earlier, in my opinion, the event doesn't end when someone leaves your event, right? That is just the beginning of the relationship. So I've got this 60-day nurture sequence, which is really a fancy way of saying, how do I continue to build that relationship for the next 60 days, for the next 2 months? And here is my literal process that a company will pay me 10 grand to do. I'll tell you what it is. Day 2 of the event, I send everybody, or I ask my clients to, send out a personalized video. Use something like Vidyard or use something like Loom. Send every single attendee at your event a personalized video that's solely created for them. You say their name. You talk about the event experience. You talk about what they said in the survey. You really make it about them. You don't pitch anything. That's the key. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck is they hire me to do an event. They're like, dude, how do I close business from this dinner? I'm like, you just got to wait a little bit because that's a really awkward experience. If you bring someone into this awesome experience, then you pitch them right away. It completely ruins the flow and the relationship. So day 2, I like to send everybody a personalized video with very targeted content. I love that we talked about the rosebud thorn system earlier. If you know someone's thorn based on their intake forms, talk about the thorns in your video. Also send them some sort of resource that you might have that might be able to help them move past that thorn. Now, day 14, this is where a lot of people are like, I could never do this. Day 14, I send everybody, I'm saying this in first person. Imagine this is you. Send everybody a handwritten note. You've captured their mailing address from the intake forms. 2 weeks after the event, mail out 20, 30, 40, 100, 200 handwritten notes. Complete game changer. On day 28, so about another 2 weeks later, I actually go to Amazon and I ship that client the gift that they mentioned in the intake form. So for Tom, it might be journals because we were talking about gratitude earlier. For Deb, it could be something to do with her podcast mic that I saw. For Aprilani, it could be, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever they said in the intake form. Oftentimes, this is like 80% of the time, it's some sort of food is what they mentioned. So I'll find like an Uber or something in their city and I'll like ship something to them via Uber Eats or something, or I'll just Amazon something. So that's on day 28. And again, these touch points, they don't cost a lot of money, but if you've got a product or service that you sell for like thousands of dollars, investing $100 in a 60-day nurture sequence is going to yield incredible returns every day of the week. On day 44, so about another 2 weeks later, I do a phone call check-in. So by this point, they've gotten my handwritten note. They've already messaged me, thanked me for their bag of Skittles or whatever. It's just like, and that I just do a quick follow-up check-in on day 44. Hey, Tom, it's been about a month and a half. How's life been? And we just catch up when we just chat. And again, I'm taking notes on Tom's thorns. And then on day 60, which is really 2 months out, I either pitch or position my product or service as the solution to their thorn, or I'll invite them to my next thing, next dinner, next virtual event, and so forth. And that 60-day nurture sequence has brought me like more business than just expecting people to buy something at the event, because I think the real opportunity is in deepening that relationship. So I wanted to share that with you because it is such an important piece of what it is I do and what I believe in, but it's the part that scares people because it takes a little bit of work, and it's so important. It's so important.
That's amazing. That's, again, that all you're reiterating the entire conversation so far is how thoughtful every element of this is. Like it's not just throwing something together in like a day and that's it. That's my event. It's like so planned and so thought out.
Dude, I've been doing these dinners for 4 years, and every dinner I host, I still learn something new. No dinner or no event for me has ever been the same. I'm close to 200. None of them have felt the same. They're always different.
That's incredible. And how do you, this takes a lot of time. How do you structure your time? Do you have like a team who help you with this? Is it just you, but you're very systematic? How do you systematize this?
So I'm very systematic in what I do. I believe in SOPs. I believe in standard operating procedures. I believe in freelancer support. I will always outsource the 3 to 10 items that I do not want to touch. I will outsource to somebody else. And typically when I'm working with an entrepreneur or with a company, they've got some sort of events team potentially, and I just become embedded into their existing culture, into their existing team, where I know what pieces of the puzzle that I'm in charge for, and anything else from a contract standpoint, I make it very clear what I'm here to do and what I can do and what I can't do. So for me, it's an equal relationship of me and the client. It can't be one is higher than the other. It's got to be a very level playing field. Yeah, and it is also amazing, like what you can do on your own if you just really believe in it.
Yeah, I love it. We've got about 5 minutes to go, approximately. I know Bharat had a few questions. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Bharat had a few questions about hybrid events. It's probably a bit too soon to mention those because have you had experience with hybrid events in the past, and how can you kind of kick those off?
I have not had experience with hybrid events, so I don't want to tell you like do this, do that. I believe what a hybrid event is like a part of it is maybe live streamed and virtual, and another part maybe people are meeting up in person. I can't really comment on hybrid events. I'm sure they work for a lot of people. It's not an arena I want to be in personally. For me, I'm either committed to virtual or I'm committed to in-person. I really don't want to have to deal with the tech from a live streaming standpoint, and then the in-person experience, and then what you get at home is totally different than what the people experience in person. And listen, I know some people that are having amazing success with hybrid events. It's just not for me. I think the way to make a virtual event feel a little bit more hybrid is sending like a pre-packaged product before the event begins, so that the user can open it on the morning and feel very inclusive. Or post-event, they get something in the mail, which maybe they would have gotten like a workbook or, again, a gift of some sort or some sort of memorabilia that is not about you, but it's all about them. So that's where I would lean in personally, is how can I make the pre-event feel more in person, and how can I make the post-event feel more in person?
Makes sense. What about, so I think the future will hopefully be like both a mixture of both. So you'll kind of go to an in-person event, but then you'll connect with the people there online, for example, start building relationships online too. Have you got any thoughts or advice about what that could look like in the future? And developing a lot of your work so far has been you developing a relationship with individuals. What about connecting with each other? Have you got any ideas about that? Yeah,
I think if there's, and I love his comments there as well. So I think if you can build a community of participants as the organizer of this event, like a Facebook group, a Slack channel, whatever that is, you should absolutely build a community. Pre-event, post-event, during event, if there's some way for users to communicate with you in real time and communicate with each other, that's the more important thing. How can your participants communicate with each other? So I'm a big believer in like private Facebook groups, private Slack channels, Slack accounts, because I've had people who have, transacted with me this year who I met like 4 years ago at one of my events, but they've been in my Facebook group ever since, and they've maybe said 2 things in 4 years. And now all of a sudden are ready to buy something. I'm like, oh, cool. I forgot that was a seed I planted 4 years ago. But had I not had a community or a daily touch point or a weekly email, I think you need to have some sort of weekly or monthly communication plan so that those relationships don't go stagnant. And something I love to do at in-person events is if I meet Tom and Tom talks to me about his, he's going to Costa Rica next week. And like, he tells me a lot about himself. I open up the notes section on my phone and I just jot down a couple notes. I get Tom's email. And then what I'll do that night after talking to maybe 6 or 7 people, this is kind of ninja. I pre-schedule emails to go out to Tom in 3 weeks' time based on the conversation we had today and right now in this moment. Hey, Tom, it was great connecting with you 3 weeks ago. How was that trip to Costa Rica? Would love to learn more about what you loved and what you hated. Something like that. And I've got all these pre-scheduled emails that will go out 3 weeks later, 6 weeks later, 6 months later. I just take the time to pre-schedule everything. I'm a big fan of like just having stuff automated that feels personal.
Yeah. That's incredible, man. Like, honestly, this is so practical, so incredible.
Oh, bro, I'm all
really,
for,
really
for theory and ideas, but I'm also all for like giving people the practical stuff, like put this into action and like you can do this for free.
Incredible. So we've got a few minutes left. If anyone's got any questions live, please ask away. We'll get them wrapped up. I've got one more which came in before we started. I'd like to get your opinion on it. How do you deal with Zoom fatigue? You know, a lot of us are feeling it right now. How do you personally deal with it as a host, but also as an attendee?
That's a great question. And what I have found to work incredibly well for me is, again, how can we introduce those elements of like food, smell, sound, conversations? How do we make it like, if your Zoom events feel like a presentation, you shouldn't be in this business. Like, people are not coming to listen to you speak for 45 minutes. Interesting, because they're listening to me speak right now for 45 minutes. But if you're hosting, but again, it's interactive, there's conversations, there's people chiming in. But I truly feel like the majority of people go to events not for the content, but for the connection. And there's stats around that 70, 80% of people go to events for the networking. They go to meet other like-minded people. The content is always going to be there. The content they could find on YouTube, or they could just buy your book. What they can't buy is those relationships and those networking opportunities. So at my virtual events, what I do is, again, everything is about them connecting with other people, whether it's breakout rooms, whether it's talking about the food they're eating, whether it's pairing up music to the question, which may sound weird, but like introducing music. All my virtual events end in this like really exhilarating dance party for 3 minutes. And at the end of the 3 minutes, you should see it. Everyone's on screen, they're dancing, they're moving around. It feels like very energetic. And I also give an opportunity to attendees to share about their experience after the event, in the last 2 minutes of the event. I just spotlight every single attendee and they go around saying, hey, this was my biggest takeaway from tonight. So I make it very like anti-presentation. And again, every 15 minutes, there's music, there's breakout rooms, there's group sharing. Music, breakout rooms, group sharing. There's always something changing. So I've had people come to my events. They're like, hey, man, I was going to leave after the first breakout room, but I had such a good conversation. I wanted to see who you'd pair me with next, so I stayed. I've had people who wanted to leave in the first 5 minutes and stayed for 2.5 hours.
That's incredible. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much. That was honestly really eye-opening. We've had lots of comments about people who have really taken a lot away from this. Where can people find a bit more about you and learn about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Email is the best for me. Karan, my first name, @jube.ca. I just put a link in the comments as well. I love writing emails. I just love writing. I love to share practically the things that are working for me, both from a personal development standpoint, but also from a tactical, what's working in my business standpoint. So there's a link down below, sendfox.com/Jube, which is my weekly newsletter. No spam. You get one email from me a week talking about what's working and what's not working. And there's some really powerful exercises in there. Like the first email you'll get is the 90-day letter. It's writing a letter to your future 90-day self. Some of the most powerful stuff I've ever seen. I'm on social media, Instagram, Let's Jube. I'm a very accessible guy. I've already had people like Bharat connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn as well. But email is definitely the best.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to write these notes down right away, and I really appreciate everything you just you come up with today. Have a great evening, and everyone who's joined in, thanks so much for dropping by. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
Take care, man. See you later.